that B is not that much well off, or that does not belong to that rich a family. Firstly, if we consider university education, and if A manages to get into a university, then what happens is, but A does not have that much aptitude to get into a good government college. Then what happens is, A has spent a huge amount of education, a huge amount of money to get into a private college. A's parents, who have spent that amount of money, attach a lot of expectations to that person, assuming that that person, since they have spent huge amounts of money, A will be able to get a good job, A will be able to have a good living standard, and they will their status in the society will increase to a great level. At the same time, who could not actually get into a good university or a proper private college because of his economic standard, what happens is some kind of sadness get attached to that person, because one, B's parents could not send their children to university, and that what that creates is, B's parents are now extremely depressed, and because of their and thinking that they won't be able to have that much status, that much living standards. B is depressed because of the fact that he could not get into university as good as that A went. But ultimately what happens is, we see that there are many people who are going to private colleges, spending huge amounts of money, but doing some basic jobs at call centers, etc., which and ultimately, even though both of them could have done the same kind of job, it's not in B's scenario, it is not being possible because of the fact that it leads to a demotivation at a basic sphere. So what happens is, how parents are getting affected. One, too much expectation is being attached to their children, and that's why they are spending huge amounts of money, and it leads to depression, as we have already explained. Two, students who have managed to get into university, what happens with them is, since too much expectation has been attached to them and a lot of money has been spent on them, they start to bear a huge pressure of expectations, a huge burden on them, that they have to live up to that expectation, they have to give enough return on that investment, and what that leads to is ultimately a lot of depression among those students who have managed to get into universities, and it leads to suicides at mass rates, and we see that happening in every sphere, be it university education or be in areas like Kota, etc., where people are committing mass suicides because of the fact that a huge amount of expectation, a huge amount of money is being attached to their education, is being attached to their well-being. And this is because of the fact that a notion has been spread that irrespective of your aptitude, irrespective of what you are capable of, if you go to a proper university, you will have better living standards, but it is not so. We'll explain to that in a later part of our speech. And finally, as our third stakeholder in this particular characterization, students who could not manage to get into universities, they become sad because of the fact that ultimately they are seeing their friends going into some kind of a college, some kind of university, even though they don't know that that person does not know a single line of code, a single line of anything related to the code industry, but that person is doing some kind of engineering in a private college. And they feel that they could not do so just because their family is not well off, and some kind of a blame starts occurring between both the children and families, where the families think that their children are not good enough, and the children think that they couldn't go to these universities because their families could not do so. And this is extremely problematic. And why is it? Because of the fact that we will explain to you in our second part of the speech that how it affects the job market and the educational realm in the present world. Firstly, there are many jobs, like I have already explained, call center based jobs or reception-based jobs, which do not require a university graduate. You don't have to be an English honors or an engineer to do a job in a basic call center. You can just do that by schooling up to class 12, etc., and some kind of a vocational training. But what happens with this now, university, with this attachment of a university degree, is that one, these kind of jobs, they are attaching too much expectations on their qualifications too, which we see even as engineers when we find a basic jobs in LinkedIn, and there are huge like jokes around it that even now for interns we are like companies are hiring with 5 years of experience, or they need to know everything, and that happens at every sphere. Even now call center jobs are wanting university graduates, even though nothing like that needs to be done. Even a small cheap vocational training can do that. Secondly, people who ultimately manage to get into these vocational courses, some kind of polytechnic universities, etc., society attaches a kind of stigma with them. What kind of stigma? That that person has lower aptitude, that person is not good enough, that person is not a good student, and that's why that person is opting for a vocational training, while that person could have easily gone into an university graduate. But the end result, the society does not see that at the end of it, both of them might end up getting the same job, might end up doing the same thing. And what that does is, many people who could join these areas and get vocational training are not incentivized enough to do so, and that fails, and that system fails people, and many people who could have been absorbed into the job market now cannot do so. And this leads to, again, a lot of stigmatization, and where this living standard could have, this basic living standard in a call center that a call center gives can be easily achieved through vocational training. And we see that everywhere, like in Western countries, etc., more than 50% of the people don't even go to universities, but they are still living a basic standard, but they still have a basic standard of living, because of the fact that many people just are doing small movers and packers based jobs, some application based training and things like that, and they are earning enough money to have a basic standard of living with a small return on investment. They are like, by spending 4 lakhs, they are getting a job. They are getting a job of, for example, 3 to 4 lakhs, and here you are spending like 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs just to get into a private university, and end up doing the same thing. So first, it leads to a lot of economic wastage. It proliferates sadness to a huge spectrum of the society, and finally, what it does, the basic jobs which can be attached, which can give majority of the people a basic living standard, cannot do so at a present moment, and that's why we at such proposition believe that it's extremely harmful.
I would like to thank the Prime Minister, and I would like to call the leader of opposition to open their side of the speech.
फ़ोन दे अपना मैक्सिमम ब्राइटनेस के साथ, टाइमर मेरे में वीडियो रिकॉर्डर है। बहुत ज़्यादा स्टटरिंग हो गया। नहीं ठीक है, अच्छा था।
Panel, I'll first characterize to you what the side opposition means by better standards of living, why university education is important, why people who enter the workforce just after the high school are at a disadvantage compared to the people who are going to the university, and how it leads to better standards of living of the college grads who go to university, and then I'll come to the rebuttals. So the side opposition by better standards of living means the economic aspects of what a person gets when a person is exploited at the workplace, what the economic compensation the person gets. Then by better standards of living, the side we also mean about what value addition the person does to the economy, what growth, what choices do the person have, or what degree of freedom does the person enjoys when the person is at his workplace. Now, coming to why university education is important. Panel, we need to understand that the side in the world of the side government, there are just call center jobs all over the country who are running this world. Whereas there are jobs which are high paid, which contribute a lot to the economic development, and who cannot employ a direct high school graduate. There are jobs like civil and mechanical engineers which cannot employ a fresher high school fresher, because involves a degree of sophistication which the university college graduate has and the high school fresher does not have. There are these high skilled jobs require multi-dimensional abilities, a combination of hard skills and soft skills which a person acquires during his stay in the university, whereas the person who does not go to the university completely lacks it, or has a notch below the person who goes to. There are research jobs which are very high paying, which require a series of university graduation. in the university, the person is subjected to a holistic growth because he has a group of friends which are multi-dimensional, which can be of a broad view of broad or different streams, which provide different growth impetus onto him, which give a worldview of different scenarios, of different branches, of different thoughts. For example, an arts guy coming in contact with an engineering guy or humanities engineering or a commerce guy may open to a broad view of the world or how things function, of how world functions, and this gives him new ideas. There is competitive pressure, there is academic competitive pressure on university while the person is in university, which gives him to think differently, which gives him to create new ideas, and hence it does value addition onto him, which inherently creates economic value onto him, which increases his standard of living. Now, we need to understand that why people who enter the workforce after the high school, just like call center guys, which the side government said are at a disadvantage. We need to understand that these people are bound by economic shackles at their workplace. These jobs which the side government mentioned, like a mechanic who just entered the workforce after the high school, or the person or the call center person which the side government talked about, these are given very low economic compensation of compared to what degree of exploitation is they face at their workplace. And hence, when it comes to the growth, it is laughable of what growth they get. A call center guy cannot become the manager at the very same workforce, at the very same workplace at which he has. And by the standards of living today, we need to understand that the standards of living in today's world, because of the social media and the internet, are not fixed. They are dynamic in nature because of the peers which a person has. For example, if we three are a peer group, then our standards of living will be judged by the average of what we three have, or what we three earn, or what we three see on social media. If we see one of our friend who is very rich, who's gone to a research job in a Western country, so our standard of living will ultimately become low. Of what we think of our standard of living will ultimately become lower now coming on to the rebuttals of the side government. They say that there will be mass proliferation of sadness because of A, financial burden, B, people will go into bad colleges, and C, there will be too much expectation. Now, we need to understand that a free market exists in terms of colleges. So if a college A has very high fees and is giving very low economic output, or giving very low research output, and charging very high fees, and the people will be able to judge by itself that the college A is charging too much for what it is giving back to the person, and hence the person is bound to not go to that college and instead choose a government college or some other colleges which have very low fees. Panel, they say that people go in bad colleges and this and that. We need to understand, the debate is not about good colleges, bad colleges. It's about what college experience imparts you, how you develop when you get that college experience, your peer group and all. They say that people who go to college are bound by too much expectation. I told you that because of that too much expectation, there is competitive academic environment which boosts that person's standard of living, which and imparts the person on a path where the sky is the limit, and the person can hence increase their standard of living to an extent where he is a notch above their peers.
Entry to the workforce needs to be unrestricted.
They said that a person can do call center job, low skilled jobs, wherein he will not be bound by the financial burdens of what college education degree will give to him. Now, the side opposition would like to point out that these are very low skilled jobs and very merely economically compensated. Again, because of the competitive standards of living which we talked about, he will compare himself to his peers who have gone on to colleges and then are going to high paying jobs, and hence he will feel that he is not being compensated enough, and he will feel a very low esteem. And panel, we need to understand that the debate is about that a narrative that university education leads to a better standards of living. In order to win this debate, the side government needs to prove to us that the narrative that the university education gives better standards of living is entirely false, and the high paying jobs can be created even if the person does not go to university.
Go, Aryan.
I would like to call the Deputy Prime Minister to extend the arguments on their side of the debate.
भाई सेकंड स्पीच में जीत जाएंगे हम लोग.
वो जो जॉब्स होती हैं एसएससी बैंक रेलवे उनको कुछ रिक्वायरमेंट होती है ग्रेजुएट एसएससी बैंक रेलवे वाली जॉब कोई आइडिया है?
हाँ, बट बैंक में बहुत लो लेवल एम्प्लॉइज बिकम ब्रांच मैनेजर्स लेटर.
मैं मानता हूँ बिकॉज वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग से काम चल जाता है ना. वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग
होता है. अरे वो खुद बोल रहे हैं कि वो रिसर्च बेस्ड जॉब्स. अरे
वो तो बहुत कम है.
कितना परसेंटेज ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन गोज टू रिसर्च बेस्ड जॉब्स. यहाँ के बैठो. स्टूडेंट्स, वो तो मैंने एक्सप्लेन कर दिया कि स्टूडेंट्स हु वेंट टू यूनिवर्सिटीज एंड स्टूडेंट्स हु डिड नॉट गेट अ चांस टू गो टू यूनिवर्सिटीज. हाँ ठीक है. यहाँ पे क्या है, सैडनेस स्प्रेड, मॉनिटरी लॉस, टाइम लॉस, ये तो बता दिया. जॉब्स हैविंग अननेसेसरी रिक्वायरमेंट्स, मैंने रिबर्टल आर्यन को बता दिया है. वो बता रहा था ना कि देखो, people switch from service-based companies to product-based companies not because of their degree but because of the experience. कि 2 साल एक.
Honorable panel, when they come up and try to contest the definition of better standard of living by saying that a person who has perhaps a higher understanding of life but extremely meager salary will be able to attain a higher standard of life, they ignore the basic prospect that when you do not have money, you do not have access to materialistic needs that can fulfill your life. That is the point at which you cannot afford a car, you cannot afford a refrigerator, you cannot afford things, and that is the basic definition of the major economic facet of a better standard of life, and that is the point when you have a smaller, when you have a bad life. Basically, you need to understand that the basic case that they are trying to put forth is that a vast majority of jobs in the economy lie in the sector where there is a lot of value addition, where people go through the motions from university education at the end of it, and at the end of it they get lakhs of compensation for the kind of job that they do. Right? A simple statistic struck my mind right during the course of his speech that is very imperative to this case. Right? You need to realize that a total of 100 people of all salaried employees in India, and you already know that to become a salaried employee in India in this scenario you need to be a graduate and stuff like that, right? So of all salaried professionals in India, only 96 of them do not pay income tax, right? And who does not pay income tax? People who have income less than 2.5 lakhs do not pay income tax, right? So this is a clear bearing of the fact that more than 96% of all salaried employees in India have a very low salary, and by the virtue of them having a low salary is imperative of the fact that the value addition that they do in the businesses that they serve is so low that the businesses cannot pay them a lot of money, which basically points to the fact that most people in India have a low salary job. So there's a statistic for you, right? You need to realize that when they come up and tell you that there is a free market of colleges, that if there is a college which is imparting bad education, people will stop going to that college, right? We clearly understand that this is a great case from a side of open market, right? But you need to realize that that is where the basic argumentation from our side comes into play, right? When the first speaker from our side came up, he told to you that the basic characterization of today's world that we live in is that university education has basically become a norm. It has become a motion that you necessarily go through. Just like after you pass class 8, you go to class 9. Similarly, as soon as you pass high school education, you go through the university. Whether or not what you want to do with your life aligns with the kind of goals that the university is offering, right? So there is such a high impetus that is now being attached to the fact that you being a graduate, to your being a university education pass out. For example, if you are from a village, just by the virtue of you being a graduate, there is a lot of stigma attached, a positive stigma attached in the sense that, okay, you are a very respectable guy, you are a person who went through the motions, you are a person who is educated in higher sciences and stuff like that, right? And so when that kind of mental stigma attaches to the people's mind, there is not a free choice that they can make. They need to realize that as soon as they have passed class 12, they must go through university education, because if they don't, society will look at them from the negative perspective, and there goes your point of free market into the trash, right? You need to realize that when we come up and tell you that there is a label attached with university education, we come up and tell you that there is a fake sense of status, there is a fake sense of respect the society assigns to it, right? Society family accords higher status to the person, that person is accorded more responsibilities, that person is looked upon with from the eyes of more status, right? While in the reality, the situation might be that they might be completely unemployable, or even if they are employable, they may be employable in such jobs, in such companies where they do not, the motions that they went through, for example, the mathematics they studied had no bearing with the kind of jobs that they have to do, right? For example, there are hundreds and thousands of people in India who are working as outsourced people for gaming companies like Roblox, right? What do those people do? Those people basically answer call center kind of jobs, right? And there are hundreds and thousands of jobs. Do you really need to study quantum mechanics and stuff like differential calculus and pay lakhs and lakhs of money in those universities just to do those jobs? The frank reality is no. You need to realize that when this happens, there is a great proliferation of sadness, because ultimately the society is getting a lot more sadder because people are not happy, right? Why is this happening? We told to you that there are a lot of economic resources that parents are now spending, right? For example, a person from a village who might have collected penny by penny and amounted say 10 lakhs rupees. Now he has to spend those 10, 12, 14 lakh rupees for his son to go to something like a Galgotia University, for him to come out from his CS degree but have no job to show for it, right? What it gives to the parents is a lot of depression, a lot of backwardness in kind of economic safety that they had, for which they get no gains in real life, right? What happens for the students? Students suddenly realize that just going to the university does not mean a better life. They get to realize that they had to work through right from the start, that they had to build an aptitude, and unless they have an aptitude, they would not have a chance at a better way of life, right? What it basically leads to is that not only are they sadder because they suddenly are faced with the grim realities of life, but also it leads to huge expectations from the society, from the family, because of which mass suicides happen. Why do you think suicides happen in places like Kota? Because people realize that the parents have spent lakhs and lakhs together for them to send to Kota, and at the end of it, they realize that they could not go through it. Why do people commit suicides at the end of their university education? Because they realize that lakhs and lakhs of money spent through cannot give them a good job at the end of it, right? You need to realize that not only is this an economic wastage and proliferation of sadness in the society at large, but also it attaches stigma for those people who realize that they just need to gain certain skills to get into certain jobs, right? For example, in places like in India, there are many people who want to be a fashion professional, for which they just have to go through a kind of a training which requires 2 years, right? They go through certain community-backed colleges which provide vocational trainings. They go through basic skills. They just enter the workforce and start learning the job, right? Those people now have a stigma attached because the society looks at them from the lens that, okay, these are people who are not college graduates, who did not even go basically to the college, and then they are looked at from the eyes that, okay, these are people who just passed school and they do not possess the mental faculty to do the job, right? Why is this problematic not only to their case, to the huge service that they are doing to the society, but it is also problematic because now employers look for more qualifications to do a job for which they do not require that qualification, right? For example, if you are now a call center or a bank puts out the need that you have to be a postgraduate, even though the work that you have to do at the end of the day can be gained out of a skill that can be acquired over a period of 6 months and is very easy and economically viable for them, right? You need to realize that in countries like Europe, in countries like USA, people, more than 2/3 of people do not go through graduation, do not enter colleges. Why is that? Because they fundamentally realize the fact that if they have to succeed at the marketplace, they have to satisfy its demands, they have to satisfy its needs, and so long as they put their mouth where the money is, they acquire the skills, they start businesses, they do entrepreneurship, they end up having the money, they end up having the skills, they end up having the status, and they end up having a better standard of life, right? You need to realize that most of the people in India, when they migrate to product-based companies, they migrate from service-based companies, right? And who are the people who enter into those service-based companies? These are the people who went out of college education, but they did not have any skills, but still they went into the call centers, even though qualification there was very minimally needed, right? They just acquired some skills in companies training for a period of 2 months. They entered into the service-based jobs, but they worked in the service-based jobs for years and years together, gaining experience, gaining knowledge, gaining the kind of mental faculties that are needed for better jobs, and then they eventually, at the end of 7, 8, 9 years, by the time they turn 30, 32, 35, they enter into good jobs, right? So did the university play an important role in the growth into a higher standard of life, or was it the experience that they earned at the company, the skill that was acquired to them through a period of vocational training, which was very inexpensive, which did not take a lot of time, is important, right? You need to realize that this is not only a matter of sadness and economics, but it is also a matter of great importance because a number of years of your prime youth are getting wasted in searching for something, in chasing something that is not going to give you gains at the end of the day that you aspired for, and this is the reason we are very proud to propose.
उधर बैठने में पॉइंट बता देना बढ़िया भाई ये वाला पॉइंट बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है, ठीक है। ये वाला पॉइंट कि तुम अपने मार्केट में घुसो तो एक्सपीरियंस तुम गेन करके तुम एक बेटर
ये अनरिस्ट्रिक्टेड एंट्री का जो पॉइंट है लास्ट में वो तुम डाल देना।
हाँ ठीक है, फिर से इसको अच्छे से समझाना। हाँ
ये मिस हो गया 6 मिनट पे आ गया, 6 मिनट पे आ गया
ठीक है, हमको यही बोलेंगे ना कि जो स्टिग्मा हो गया उसकी वजह से मार्केट एक तरह से रिस्ट्रिक्ट हो गया, लोग नहीं जा
क्वालिफिकेशन चाहिए उससे मार्केट अनरिस्ट्रिक्टेड हो गया है। इट्स नॉट
वही भाई द थिंग इज कि तू अपना स्पीच इसी से मतलब इसी से स्टार्ट करना कि देयर एंटायर आइडिया ऑफ देयर वर्क प्लेस, देयर एंटायर आर्ग्यूमेंट अबाउट वर्क प्लेस एक्सप्लॉइटेशन एंड हाउ दे कांट मूव अहेड इन देयर लाइफ इन देयर वर्क प्लेस इज वेरी स्क्यूड बिकॉज ऑफ द फैक्ट दैट एक्सपीरियंस इन द वर्क फोर्स मैटर्स अ लॉट। और वहाँ पे फिर सर्विस टू प्रोडक्ट बेस्ड कंपनी एंड एज वी हैव एक्सप्लेन द सर्विस टू प्रोडक्ट बेस्ड कंपनीज विच ये वाला पॉइंट। और इस मार्केट में एक्सपीरियंस होने के लिए पहले मार्केट में घुसना इम्पोर्टेंट है। यूनिवर्सिटी के बिना तुम मार्केट में घुस नहीं सकते। दिस नोशन दिस थिंग इटसेल्फ
पूरा
इज
जॉब
क्रिएटिंग
मार्केट पूरा इकोनॉमी डिस्टॉर्ट हो जा रहा है। इस वर्ड को डिस्टॉर्ट
ये पॉइंट बोल देना कि nowadays we are seeing an increasing trend among Google etc where they are trying to promote that we don't need university graduates, we don't want university graduates. Google is providing equal employment to even why is that because of the fact in US that even an Uber driver shares his lead code experience shares his experience in lead code about how he managed to get into Google by cracking interviews, and that's because of the fact that now companies are increasing promoting the fact that you don't need a university education to get into workforce because of the idea that you're not because once you get into the workforce the experience you gain is actually making you skilled enough to get better jobs, get a better position in the society. आर्यन ये रिप्लाई हो जाएगा ये मैं लूँ?
तू भी जा सकता है अगर तू अच्छा से रिटॉर्ट के साथ करे तो।
वो तो मैं करता हूँ, पता ही है
भाई बढ़िया से लिख के जाना, तेरे को पॉइंट्स तो पता ही है सर। बस वही इकोनॉमिक वेस्टेज, लॉस, प्रोलिफरेशन ऑफ सैडनेस के पॉइंट, लॉस ऑफ
उन्होंने कॉन्टेस्ट ही नहीं
लॉस ऑफ इयर्स ऑफ यूथ,
प्रोलिफरेशन ऑफ सैडनेस को उन्होंने कॉन्टेस्ट ही नहीं किया। इनके स्टूडेंट देखते हैं
एक पेपर होगा आज का, हाउ मेनी एजेस आ गए, सो आई शुड हैव गॉट 5 पेपर्स।
बाकी लोग छाप लेंगे ना।
3 कोई मार्क्स थे, टॉप 3 तो विलासा, विनय एंड
2 है। एक पेपर है मत दो।
समझा देगा ना एकदम तेरा केस तेरे हाथ में, बस तेरे को चिल्ला के एकदम चिल्ला के फुल जोर से कॉन्फिडेंस के साथ में ठीक है। इन्होंने एक बार पूरा कॉन्टेस्ट ही नहीं किया। स्लेजिंग करेगा, स्लेजिंग करेगा, तू भी स्लेजिंग कर देना चाहिए। आई डोंट नो द रियल स्पीच।
Chair, first of all, I'll be talking about what definition we gave about about better living standards, how we characterize living standards as opposed to what they characterize living standards. See, they only constricted their viewpoint about living standards as to the financial means of person, how much money that person can make. But how we characterize living standards to you in our LO speech was that not just we do not just mean an economically sound. Of course, like that person would be economically sound and financially sound, but we also believe that that person would have access to better opportunities. He would have connections with academically oriented intellectual people who he had met in his time at university when he was spending those 3 years of college, which they characterize as something as waste. You need to understand that difference, that access to opportunities, that connections to people you have who are academically oriented, who are who are statistically proven that they would do better in life as compared to someone who does not have a college degree. That connection matters to people, and that then pushes the narrative that of course that person would have better living standards. Now coming to some rebuttals in which they try to propose to you that okay, this narrative, what it does is it proliferates sadness somehow in their model. What we come up and will tell you that they said that in their case sadness would be proliferated. What happens if people just stop going after university education, just taking mere call center jobs or jobs that require low skilled, not those hard skills that you can only learn in university education. What would happen in that case? What would happen? They come up and say, call center jobs, people can do call center jobs with just mere vocational training. They were trying to trying to push a very false narrative in which they said that most college graduates only go for call center jobs, which was something very problematic. What happens usually is that a call center job, so usually freshers jobs or a job in which you go as a fresher after you have attained a college degree and you learn something in the job. In their world, what would happen is just because that person has only taken vocational training for a call center job, they would do their call center job in their entire life. From start to end, they will only do the call center job because they have taken vocational training only for that job. But in our world, what would happen is that since that person has actually taken university level degree, they would see the call center job as just a launch pad for learning, as a launch pad to kickstart their career, and after they can have more opportunities to become managers. You could change careers, shift careers, learn different skill sets because they have had that experience in their case. What happens is that they tell you, they give you statistics. Okay, there are mass suicides in university levels. What we tell in their world, when people stop going to universities, what would happen is that when they see that okay, I'm doing a call center job after having vocational training, I'm seeing someone, my friend who has actually taken the pains to go through 4 years of university, and now he or she has better access to promotion, better access to jobs, and better access to making money to jobs which only open for university level person. Suicide rates would then increase in your world. So this point of mass proliferation of sadness is not exclusive to our world, and that's why we have proved to you, we have characterized to how this can actually increase in your world too. So we do not take that point at all. So don't try to push that narrative. Now again, that point of financial burden, we nullified it to you by saying that okay, a free market exists, and this debate is not about a good or bad level university education. This debate is about a university education versus no university education at all. At least in our world, what we try to build, that everyone should have that basic level of university education, that basic level of college degree, which can provide them a platform to do well in their lives, which they totally ignore in their entire speeches. Now coming to another rebuttal, Arun comes up and puts up a vague statistic. Okay, that out of 100 people, 96 people of salaried individuals in India do not pay income tax, and he puts a mere assertion that most of these 96 salary people are people who have college degree. We contested by saying that no, there are several salaried employees in India by government employees who do very low level jobs which do not require college degrees, such as manual scavengers or someone who picks garbage and stuff like that. And that is why they do not pay that income tax. It is not because they went to a college university level and they attained a bad education. It is because of that they are not being able to pay income tax. So this statistic completely falls down on their face, and we do not buy that statistic at all. So and they come up and say you that in our world what is happening is that the 4 years of the student's life is being wasted, and somehow it is going to affect their entire life. We come up and tell you that in your model what would happen is that since you did not take pains to work hard, make sacrifices in those 4 years of your life, your entire life would be wasted because you would be seeing your peers doing so well in life that your mass suicide rates would become high because you just didn't decide that okay, I don't want to take any college degree. Now let me tell you about how development of dynamic skills is very important in today's world, and how university and college level education actually supports you, actually helps you in developing those dynamic skill sets. What happens is when you are in a university level, you are directly exposed to industry because universities have training and placement cells which understand the demand skill sets that the industry requires. So what this tells you is that that what skill sets that you need to continuously work on to to make yourself a better graduate who can make good living, who can have access to better living after once they graduate. But in your world that is never going to happen, because your world does not take into account the changing scenario in which industries require dynamic people who just do not care about one thing that you have learned, but care about the holistic development of a human being, in which they don't only care about what you have learned in your vocational training, but they also care about how you interact with people, what soft skills that you do have, which something we believe that can only be learned at university level. My last point of characterization would be what precedence does it set to the society? In your narrative, when you regret that university education does not lead to better living standards, so what would happen? People would start dropping out of universities, would start choosing career paths that do not have to do not push you to go to universities. What you have to understand is that in that paradigm, in your world, universities actually require people to go there to do research and to advance society. In your case, the society and technological development would become stagnant because you are pushing the narrative that people should not go to universities and should only take vocational training and somehow lead their life and do better in their lives. We do not want to live in that world, and we believe that university, since it provides that holistic experience to that human being, it launches a platform, it gives them a platform, it gives them a launch platform where they can kickstart their career and do really well in life as compared to someone who only did that repetitive thing that he has already been doing and not getting better opportunities. And that is why we are so proud to oppose.
I would like to thank the deputy leader of opposition. And I would like to call the government whip to conclude their side of the case.
ये भाई इनका पूरा केस कॉन्ट्राडिक्टरी है, ये हारना इम्पॉसिबल है हम लोग के लिए.
Okay, the panel. First of all, I would like to tell you something. The statistic that we told you, that our DPM told you about, it was about salaried employees. It was about employees who were educated and who filed income tax return, and 96% of them whose salary were very low. It was not about manual scavengers or very low profile jobs. They did not even file the income tax return. So it was about people who actually went to the university. And just to get some connection, isn't high school enough to get connection? Just to get connection, you are going to go to the university, waste out your time, waste out your 4 years. And also in our side, a small percentage of people who have the talent, who actually have the mental aptitude to go to the university, who are fit for research, they will always be going to they are always going for the universities. What we are contesting is that you going to the universities does not lead to a better standard. It leads to a better standard for only a minority of people, like 10 to 20%. Those people who have the aptitude, they will always be going to the university. They are going to get this research job. Our society is going to advance. But what we are saying is, those majority of people who are going, who does not have the aptitude for the university, they are going there, they are wasting their time, they are wasting their money, they are getting out of there being more sad and sad. What they are doing is they are also not contributing to the economy enough. And also most of the jobs that we are talking about, they only require vocational training. Once you get inside the workforce, you actually know what you have to do. Once you are there, it is acting as a launch pad. Like in their side of they said that after getting out of the university, we will take a job at a call center, it will act as a launch pad. In our side also, we are getting a job in the call center and it is acting as a launch pad, but not the university education that is propelling it. It is the experience that they gain. It is the industry, they are there, they are inside the workforce and they are gaining good experience. And with experience, a person can change from here, a person can easily switch jobs. Experience is much more important for such kind of, for the kinds of jobs that we are talking about, not university education, not studying quantum mechanics or such. And people who have to study that, they are always going to go there. And also why high school education is not enough for the kinds of jobs that we are talking about. High school education is much enough. We are talking about extra burden, and this burden is going to affect our stakeholders, that is parents and that is students. See, what we are talking about is the majority of students that see a lot of students prepare for the IIT JEE, but only a few fraction of them get to the college. What about the other students? They are sad, they have spent a lot of money, they go to a bad college and they have started feeling worse because they could not go to the college that they wanted to go, and they are already feeling sad. And once they get inside the college, they spend a lot of time, they spend a lot of monetary resources there, and what is happening there is after they
और
get
रही
out of the
बात
college,
वही
they don't
proportion
even
of the
want
people
to
who are
go for
getting into
vocational job
वही
because
बात
they
है
think they're
कि
somehow good. They are
children of
they are
actors etc.
better than
whose
they
passion
don't
lies in
want to do
different
the job.
areas. But
This is
still
causing a
they,
stigma
and they
to
are
these
not even
kind of
good
job.
students.
No
But since
people
they
do
can
not want to
economically
take
and financially
vocational
manage
jobs
it,
now.
all of them have
They
gone
are
to
less
universities
inclined towards
etc.
the job,
and then
and
dropped out
what
of
this
it.
is doing,
So
this is
यही proof होता है
attaching
कि
a stigma to a
financially
large
अगर तुम
portion of
सही
the
हो तो
jobs.
तुम्हारे माँ बाप
So
तुमको
these
भेजेंगे ही
so people
यूनिवर्सिटी
do not
में
want to
irrespective of
take
whether you
these
have
kinds of
aptitude or
jobs,
not.
and in the and this is not going to lead to a better standard of living because after 4 years a person is out there and by the end of it he has to do the same kind of job. He has wasted his time, he has wasted his resources, and he is going to enjoy the same standard of living or even less if his parents have spent a lot of money, if his parents will be at a monetary loss and they are going to
ऐसा कभी
lose
नहीं
time,
होता कि
they are going to
people
lose time and
कि अगर
all the required and all the required burden that they have,
कभी
all
नहीं
the
होता कि
all the
people
unnecessary
जिनके पास
expectations
vocational
that they
training
are
का
harboring, it is
option
going to
रहता है,
drag
अगर वो
them
white
down.
collar option रहता है,
And
people who
also
have
the
aptitude
job
and
requirements are
financial
also the
freedom
job that does not actually
don't choose
require
university and
graduate
still go for
training, that
vocational
does not
training.
actually
जिनके
require
पास
a high
aptitude
level of
USA में
training,
vocational
high level of
अभी ये point अभी
qualification.
डालना जरूरत है,
They are
नया
getting
point
more
लगा
and
है।
more vocational
कौन
jobs
सा नया
because
facet
so
लगा
many
है,
graduates
नया
are out
dimension
there.
लगा है।
So
नहीं,
many
मतलब
graduates
उन्होंने
are out
कहा
there
कि
that they
university
want a
में ये बोलो
graduate now. So
भाई जो
people
लोग
who are
जो लोग
directly
afford
going
कर
for the
सकते हैं, वो लोग
vocational
तो
training,
चाहते
they
ही
are
है,
getting
that's a fact,
sidelined, they are
that's not
getting
even a new
stigmatized.
point.
Like
It's a
people
fact.
don't want to go for vocational training, who have their paths clear, they are having difficulty because of this trend, because now there is a trend that everyone in the society has to go to the engineering. Now people who actually understood that no, we don't want to go to college, we can actually do better without it, they are being stigmatized, they are seen as less capable than other people, and they are also facing pressure from the society and they are facing pressure for the parents. And what is also happening is concentration of people in a certain amount of job, like the high profile job, the high paying job, they are very less. Most what our side of the house is talking about, these kinds of jobs are much more than the job they are talking about, like a research job, like the IT sector, high paying jobs, they are very less and only a few percentage of people can go there, and lot of people are aiming for that, they are concentrating for that. What about the jobs that really add to the economy? What about what you can really do in the economy? In the long run, this is going to be bad for the economy and for the society as a whole, because what is it doing? It is having a society with high unnecessary expectations that cannot be fulfilled. They are having this false dream. If they work from the starting towards this vocational job, they are going to enjoy a better quality of living, a higher standard of living. As we can see in the Western countries where such kind of stigma does not exist, people like, you can see electricians, carpenter, okay, they are having a good standard of living. But what we have done on our side of the job, they have doing on their side of the house, they are stigmatizing this kind of job, and people do not even want to go in there. Let us take the example was taken that a person in a village, from a village, he has studied from tier 3 university, and by the way I want to tell you that tier 1 universities are far and few, only very few people can go there. So what we are talking about is the universities. In Dhanbad there are going to be 20 universities that you don't know about. What they are teaching them? They are teaching them nothing, and people also pay for universities. So universities, like, you pay, you get a degree. What it is doing, it is promoting a market where people are getting qualifications, but actually they are gaining nothing about it. What they are doing is they are living in a hope that okay, after 4 years I'll get something. No, they are going to get nothing, and by the end of the 4 years they are going to get out of the market, and what they are going to be, they are going to be sad and depressed. And first of all, the standard of living is not only defined by the 3 or 4 people that you have on the social media. You are living in a place, you see out there how people are
Like, are best
living, that is
connections
going
that you
to
have
define the
made in
standard of
college, or are they
living.
made
And to
with
have a
people
better
different
standard of
colleges,
living, you
different
actually need to be in the reality and not only be to
ये तो
and not
अबे
only
हटाओ,
of
कोई बोल
your
रहा
role.
है।
But
वो
also I
question
want
तुम
to
पूछ
talk
सकते हो,
about
ये question तो
how
इसमें
experience is important. Like in Google nowadays, they are talking about you show us what you have experienced, you show us what you have done. They do not want college degree. You can now easily change from a service-based sector to product-based sector just by having experience and by doing vocational training and by bettering yourself. You can do what their side of the house is doing. They are keeping the standards of entering into the market so high that normal people are not able to enter the market. And what we are saying is that allow everyone to enter the market, and once people enter market, experience is going to propel them to a better place.
छूट गया झूठा नहीं लग तो मेरा ये वाला बोल दिया था क्या
कौन सा?
I would like to thank the government whip. Now I would like to call the opposition whip to conclude their side.
ये बोल दिया और ये वाले हमारे पॉइंट्स लिख
135. 135 and 6.
No, I see 135.
मैं तो 135 से बोल
Good afternoon, everyone. Our side opposition is debating on the motion. This House regrets the narrative that a university education leads to a better living standard. University education exposes a student to a social lifestyle, and his perspective changes from a frog in a well to someone who comes to know about different culture and a social exposure, which not only make him economically sound but also comes to know about the things, how they work behind the curtain. Now coming directly to the rebuttals of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister said it is just a label and add no value. See, jobs are limited and going through a sad proliferation just because you are not competitive enough, and blaming the system is utter baseless. A better lifestyle demands sacrifice. Their model will actually give stagnant and stunted growth with no prior experience to social connection. PM has created that label has created a chain of thought associated with depression, leading to suicide just because they cannot stand the pressure. The world out there is competitive and harsh, and not a bed of roses, but comes with the thorns of bushes as well. The university provide a holistic development to manage the pressure and the up and down they will eventually face in the life. There will be no return until you invest. And if you are looking for a better living standard, they took example of quota and suicides associated with it. It is not because it is not just simply because of the label that they are just simply associating everything, that there is a pressure of the expectations that you have to go through a university level education. Suicide there has a broader perspective. It is also related to the isolation and the neglect that they face due to the parental isolation and at an innocent age without parents guiding them about the harsh reality of the truth. The isolation and exposure to harsh word from the safe houses family is the prime reason of suicide. This is what university education guarantees an individual. The student learn to adapt social lifestyle, the academic pressure, and tackling it, making him suitable to the society. Our LO is specified the debate is not about good colleges and bad colleges. People are well informed about the value a college will add before choosing it. So if side proposition is choosing a bad college with high fees, shows their discretion in decision making, which is the result of being biased to a university less education. Coming to the rebuttals, DPM, on the side DPM said that inexpensive vocational training is sufficient enough for the job, but what value are they adding to an overall social lifestyle of a person? The connection he made during his time in college is indispensable and is completely ignored in the model supported by the side government. The proliferation of sadness is exclusively more in their side of house, as a person who works in a call center sees his peers graduated from a college, earning and having a better lifestyle than him, and is being sure that he is not reaching it to up to 9 to 10 years down the line. This will actually add more of a depression, and this depression is not about enviousness, but about the support he will not be able to provide his family and society involved. Coming up to the rebuttals to the opposition big. He has said that high school is just sufficient enough for the connections you are going to make, but I am strongly debunking it by saying it, because basically the people whom you are just coming into the connection at high school are immature. You are also immature, and the people who are coming who you are coming up with the connections are basically from a same cultural perspective, from a same cultural background and same financial background, which add no or a marginal value to their overall personality development. The example that in a college they will be facing people from various cultural and from various financial background is actually will have a better scope rather than just being a frog in a well. The connections that you made at high schools are just nothing more than useless.
Connections.
The point that stigma does not exist in Western country that the opposition has said. See, you have to have a college degree to have access to better paying jobs such as investment banking and consulting. every job which have a pressure added to it, which has a value that you are definitely going to add to the society, comes up with the expectations that you must be able to handle the pressure, and what university education makes us able enough, and what it just put us into a grip of the academic pressure, and how to tackle it when we come out tackling it as a better individual who can handle the pressure. These better paying jobs actually create, and this is actually completely ignored from their side of the house. See, they've said, they've also said that the people will just go to the colleges who want to do the researches, who want to do, they will just simply attend the colleges, but it should not be something necessary and meant to the people to the people who are meant to do the jobs. See, basically, when you are seeing a hierarchy, the people who are doing research will actually be motivated by the influx coming from the low side of the house, and from the low side of the hierarchy, which is actually comprised of the people who want a job, who want a salary after 4 years or after a certain period of time. They want a return from the society, and when the influx is low, basically the researches and the development associated with it will also fall down, which basically is basically what our side of house is proposing. So they will be uninterested to go to the colleges. So now I would be iterating the points that our side of the house believes in. Our side of the house has continuously stressed that better living standard is just not about economical well-being, but it also adds values he/she adds through his personality. Personality development requires how mentally sound he or she is, and how his presence is actually an asset to the society and not a liability. People are in prime when they comes to the university. They are not only channelized to a certain stream of job, but come across the ideas and explore the ideas from their colleagues, thus getting a chance of an overall holistic growth. I want to bring in the focus of the adjudicator to the nuances of the motion that the narrative existing in society that a university education will lead to better living standard is proven through the fact that jobs which require high skill set must ensure that the person has gone through the process of sequential pressure handling situation which are paramount when coming up working for these jobs. Our side of house believes in that living standard are not just how economically sound a person is, but how well he is connected to various aspects of lifestyle. He would be making a social circle that would be investing in his possible idea. Life out in open is not a bed of roses, as I have already iterated before. It comes with thrones, and we have university education is about a culmination of lifestyle rather than narrow perspective of money, and he is very proud to oppose.
प्रज्ञान बॉटल ले लिया। तुमको जब जॉब स्विच करना होगा, तुम 25 साल की उम्र के हो, तुम 25 साल के बस में चाहे अरे बोलो, क्योंकि एकदम डम आर्गुमेंट है, ये फैक्ट है, ये कोई पॉइंट नहीं है नया, ये फैक्ट है। क्या अरे हाई स्कूल से कनेक्शंस की इमेच्योर कैसे बोल सकते हैं? अरे कनेक्शंस की ज़रूरत तो हर प्लेस में होता है।
ये करना ही नहीं है आर्ग्यूमेंट, ये आर्ग्यूमेंट हो गया यूनिवर्सिटी वर्सेस स्कूल का। हमको बस बोलना है कि जहाँ कनेक्शंस तुमको मिल भी रहे हैं ना, बहुत टॉप यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में मिल रहे हैं तुमको कनेक्शंस, बहुत कम लोगों को ये पता चलता
है। आज आर्यन एकदम बहुत स्लेजिंग करना आज नहीं करें, थोड़ा करना।
Externals में चल रहा है।
Starting in 3, 2, 1. Honorable Chair, the side government loses this debate when they fail to grasp the essence of the definition that they are trying to obsess over the fact that this house regrets the narrative that a university education leads to better living standards. This was what you had to debate on. What they were obsessing over was that this house regrets the narrative that a university education leads to somehow a better individual human being who has more chances at success. Okay, this was, something nuanced that you had to grasp over the debate, and you could not understand, throughout your definition, or, throughout your three speeches, this is something that you could not understand. Now, even if we take that into perspective, let's take your model. In your model, what happens? You talk about two things: stigmatization and proliferation of sadness. We, completely characterized to you and proved to you in our three speeches that stigmatization and proliferation of sadness are something that are not exclusive to your world. In fact, what happens is that this stigmatization and proliferation of sadness would actually be, exaggerated if you try to push your narrative, whatever you're trying to push through your three speeches. What happens is that, again, I'm going to pull those points, okay, that you are saying that, okay, this call center guy would have this stigma that, okay, since I did not have the financial means to go to college, I could not, get this high paying job. But, what we believe is that, okay, that, that kind of stress, that kind of sacrifice, that kind of financial sacrifice, or, the sacrifice of those 4 years that you give in college are actually necessary to, to ensure that you do not get stigmatized for the rest of your life once you come out of that college. Since you might, feel that extra pressure, you might feel that, extra, whatever financial burden that you are going to face in those 4 years of college. But, once you have, gone through that process, you would at least be able to ensure that, now what I have, is that that basic launchpad, that basic platform through which I can do better than the next guy, and that is the narrative we are trying to push. Again, your point of mass suicides, your point of proliferation of sadness does not hold in, exclusively in your case, because we have proved to you that, okay, what would happen is, this proliferation of sadness would somehow actually extend and, get exaggerated in your case, because, this narrative that, people should, not go to college, exacerbates this point in itself. Your point that, okay, qualification, that some, high paying jobs require qualification requirement shows that you have not understood the essence of the debate. Again, you had to prove to me that, the narrative that exists that university education leads to better living standards is false and untrue in itself. You did not have to prove to us, or to the house that the narrative that a university level education provides a better human being. So for all those reasons, it is important for you to again and again go back and understand what is the essence of the debate, and that in that it was to regret the narrative that to somehow disprove the fact that a university level education does not lead to better living standards by giving arguments and analysis as to how that is untrue. But what you did was you went on another philosophical level and somehow tried to skew the definition by saying that, okay, we will obsess about the fact that, okay, university level education actually does not make a good human being. You can actually make good human beings, or have better shots at life by not having university education. You debated in a complete utopia, while we completely characterized to you in real world by talking about real assumptions, by giving you real examples that actually exist. But in your case, that car mechanic who would actually go to college versus that car mechanic who would just run their small business. In our world, that car mechanic who actually goes to college, learns something about his business, would have better chances of actually going on to set up an empire or an industry in which he can actually have access to that better lifestyle. But in your case, that car mechanic would always remain constricted like a frog in the well in the same car mechanic shop that his father gave to him, and that is why we believe that our world is a much better world to live in, and that is why we are so proud to oppose.
I would like to thank the opposition reply speaker. Now I call the government reply speaker for his speech.
फोन टाइमर
एक सेकंड रुकना दीजिए।
DND ऑन कर, ब्राइटनेस हो रहा है, टाइमर एयरप्लेन मोड ऑन कर।
ब्राइटनेस फुल कर दिया।
Go Aryan.
Honorable panel, even though I'm a very firm believer in the rights of human beings, right, and I'm all in for things like human rights, Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens and stuff like that, What I essentially believe at the end of their speech is that some people should never be given the right to create the freedom of expression, right? And my reasons are as follows. You need to realize that when they come up and tell you that university is something that when you go to university, you get connections. You get a part of a social segment where you get access to so many connections that those connections are going to propel your career to such great lengths that it is going to be extremely gainful for you, right? When they come up and tell you that university gives you access to high-profile consulting jobs in companies like BCG and McCain, so that you can now earn in crores and crores of rupees. When they come up and tell you that when people do not go to universities, research won't happen, that the growth and development of the country would be static, right? They do not realize the basic fact that we are not debating whether we should go to universities or not, right? We are debating whether the fact that you should go to universities with the perspective in mind that at the end of it, you are going to have access to a better quality of life, as against to the fact that whether you can subscribe to those faculties of life, to that standard of life, just by going through vocational training, just by entering into the workforce and gaining the experience out of it, which is ultimately going to propel your career to great lengths, right? When they come up and tell you that consulting jobs are something that you get only out of universities, I tell you that consulting jobs are something that none of us, even though we are in tier 1 universities, have access to, which is the simple reason that they are so fleeting, right? 0.1% of people in the economy get access to those jobs, right? What we are basically talking about are those people who do not need to go to those jobs just to become a part of a workforce that is ultimately where they're ultimately going to do things that the university does not require them to do, right? They come up and tell you that a better standard of life encapsulates things like social understanding, right? I do not understand how studying things like computer networks, operating systems and stuff like that has suddenly made me so great a human being when I came to university that now I have a greater understanding of life and I can really understand what life is all about. So far as I can remember from my experience in college is that a lot of bad things that I know today have been gained through the past experience of 2-3 years and nothing positively ultimately good has come out of it, at least in social terms, right? You need to understand that when they come up and tell you that university education is so good, right, that when people go to call centers, ultimately 10 years later they will know that there is a good job there and they have to go there, right? Why do they not end up in good jobs straight out of university if university is the one that is taking them to those jobs, right? If university is the one that is getting them those jobs, shouldn't then they be getting those jobs straight out of college, right? Why are they going to call centers and then 10 years later they suddenly know that okay, there is a certain thing that they can achieve and then you realize that okay, now I have to thank my university for opening my eyes that I know that okay, there is a job opening at Microsoft that maybe I can upskill myself and apply for, right? You need to realize that there are a large majority of jobs that are present in the society, tier 3 clerical jobs, which most of the people do, right? A lot of people do. A lot of people who apply for taxes, right? They came up and told to me that there are things like manual scavengers, they do not pay taxes, right? Let me tell you that my manual scavengers are persons who do not even file taxes, right? So they do not even are reflected in the statistics. When I come up and tell you that when salaried people, most of them do not pay taxes, what I mean is that their salaries, even though they come out of universities, they hold positions in companies, they ultimately are so low because their businesses cannot afford to give more salaries to them because the kind of value addition that they are doing is very minimal, and that is because the skills that they have is very minimal. That is because the university that they attended gave them the skills that were very minimal, right? It has become a kind of a business in our society that you just go to university, you just go through a training, you just go through a kind of a degree just to have that degree because you feel that it is important, and for that pursuit you waste lakhs and lakhs of rupees altogether, right? When they come up and tell you that social pressures and proliferation of sadness is something that is present in both sides of the house, you need to realize that proliferation of sadness is much more greater when we come up and tell you that when a person expects to have something good out of a 4 years worth of hard work and then he does not get it, right? The sadness that will come out will not be basic sadness. The sadness will be his dreams will be shattered and he will suddenly realize that the 4 years of time, the financial resources of his parents, and most importantly, the 4 and 5 years of his youth that are never going to come back, the prime years of his life. For example, if a person is at his prime for 50 years, right, and if you waste 10% of that in doing something futile that did not add to your career in any manner, you would realize that there is sadness in my life because I ended up doing something that I should not have done in the very first place, and this is where the society realizes that it is completely, that this is something that I should not have indulged in at the very start.
Both the teams may shake hands, please. We will be declaring the verdict after 7 minutes.
Yeah.
After 7 minutes.